topic. Reeta, the last time we had you on, I think it was like right before the Ravens divisional playoff game that you guys won. Since then, you guys have added Derrick Henry, running back Lamar Jackson won his second MVP. Schedule dropped last week. Schedule dropped last
Oh,
week,
I
and
don't like that. That was very shady. That was very shady of you. That was very shady of you. Very shady. I caught it. I caught it. That was very shady of you. Very
I was
shady.
just
Yeah, that
stating that he won the MVP, and there was nothing else to
nah,
it.
nah. It's very
he, he,
shady.
he lost to my boy Pat,
Very
but
shady.
I wasn't gonna go there. We were just
And
gonna
Pat
leave
had
it.
more running attempts than Lamar. Pat
Okay, now
had
that's
more rushing attempts than Lamar. So running
here.
back here, okay?
Here's this is actually a couple more question that I wanted to ask you about it. Do you think that in that game that Lamar either went rogue or John Harbaugh was just like, yo, we're gonna make you throw the football because everybody said that you can't throw the football? Do you think that was something that happened?
That, no, that is the latter did not happen. Okay, I can tell you that now. The latter did not happen. The former happened. I believe that they went into the game with a game plan of, running the football, and whatever. And then, once they saw how the Chiefs were moving down the field on the defense, which by the way, I mean, the defense played extremely well in the second half, gave up no points.
Yeah.
That they just kind of panicked and threw everything out the book. If anything, I blame Harbaugh more so for being a guy that doesn't put his foot down and doesn't cuss people out, because he clearly said at halftime that they needed to run the ball more. So that didn't happen. 6 times is protrude for a team that's number one in rush offense. I think the Lamar hears the chatter, just like you called him a running back just now. He hears all of that. And I think that, I think he thinks that he can change the narrative if he wins the game, a big game, a certain way. And I think Lamar just got to say fuck all that. I think at some point he got to win the way that he knows how to win best. And if that includes utilizing your legs, then that's what you have to do. And until he honors and accepts his superpower, because that's what makes Lamar special.
Yeah.
That this is going to continue to happen, which is getting close, but then no cigar. So.
Well, let's talk about this year's version of the Ravens. So the schedule came out last week. Two-part question for you. One, I'm one of the people I enjoy when the schedule comes out. Like, I enjoy it because it's a fun thing. I'm NFL obsessed. And since I became a member of the media, I like to see okay, how much these hotels and flights gonna cost to these cities I gotta go through. But we have some people that's like, well, it's just the schedule. Why are you caring about it so much? What do you feel about the actual schedule release? Rollout that the NFL has, and what do you specifically think about the Ravens schedule this year?
As a person that I'm like you, I just want to get my flights and I just want to get my, hotels. I hate the schedule release. Hate, because now airlines have gotten hip to it. They hike the prices like way up. You know what I'm saying? And they price gouge, and I hate that. I remember a couple years ago they used to drop it like a Beyonce album in the middle of the night. Like, here's the schedule release, and then you'd be like, oh, okay. And I miss that. And I understand that the NFL is a machine. They want all the money. Okay. So if they know that they can rip off some company by giving them commercial times, for a schedule release, that's what they're going to do. So while I understand the business portion of it, I don't love it for a number of reasons. And again, the price gouging right after really just it's just egregious as far as I'm concerned. In terms of the schedule of the Ravens, I mean, we've all heard like they have the second hardest schedule going into the season. Now, this is us having this conversation before a snap has even been played in the regular season, because they have 10 playoff teams that they're playing, and we all know that things change, injuries change teams. There's a lot of things that could change over a course of an NFL season. They ended the season last year playing the second hardest schedule in the National Football League. And, now they're starting off allegedly doing that, but we just got to see how this all plays out, because it could go from second hardest to like, third easiest, just based
Middle
on
of
a
the
couple of
road.
like unfortunate injuries. You know what I'm saying? So looking at the schedule, and we talked about this on my radio show on Sunday. You look at it and you're curious to see, how this is going to unfold. And I put them at the 11-6 mark. I think that they are going to downgrade just a little bit. It reminds me a lot of the 2011, 2012 Ravens, where the 2011 team was actually better than the Super Bowl team the year after. And they
Right.
actually had won 2 more games. 4 and 10-6 they were in 2012, and essentially, they go and win the Super Bowl. But sometimes, things like that happen. They lost defensive coordinator. They've lost a couple of guys in free agency. So I do expect them to kind of go through their lumps and bumps because they have a new defensive coordinator. We know that, star players don't play in preseason anymore. Essentially, everybody's afraid to allow their teams to play. So the first 3 games essentially like, a preseason game for everybody. You know what I mean? And that's unfortunate because that's one of the hardest parts of their schedule, the first 5 weeks. But ultimately, I think that at least in the regular season, okay, we can have a conversation about Harbs, we can have a conversation about Lamar or whoever else in the postseason, and it can be valid. But at least in the regular season, Harbaugh is one of the better coaches, and Lamar plays at an extremely high level when he's healthy. So I think that they'll scale down a little bit, but I think that they can somehow come out with 11 wins. And, if they make the playoffs again, which, I mean, obviously I would expect that if Lamar is healthy.
Right.
You paid Derrick Henry too much money to only give somebody 6 carries if you make it to the playoffs. I don't know who I got to talk to, but running the football is going to get you to a championship, okay? Not throwing the football. So Derrick Henry is going to have to be what you paid him to be in order to advance and go to New Orleans. I don't know who needs to hear it. I don't know who I got to yell this shit to the mountaintop to, but you better ride the horse and King Henry, and that's the way that you're going to be able to ride this playoffs, period.
Well, speaking of that, that's part of my question. We haven't talked, since free agency and the draft. So we got King Henry that's over there. So, for a running back room that's went through a lot of injury these last couple of years, it feels like that's an unfair backfield. In Chicago, we would call that a slaughter if you have somebody like him and Lamar in the same backfield. But then also looking at the draft class, y'all went cornerback a couple of times with Nate Wiggins being the first round pick. Got some offensive line help. Y'all also went running back. We're seeing Allen. Like how have you liked the Ravens off season so far? And do you think that you guys at least have the starting pieces to get you guys over the hump against the Chiefs? And speaking of schedules, you got somebody like the Bengals in your division who has the weakest schedule in the NFL. So, are y'all a little bit worried in division as well?
You always have to be worried in the division of the AFC North because it is a very strong division. And last year, I actually said on our podcast that When They Drive that I thought that the Browns would be second to the Ravens in the division, and I ended up being right. Now, I know that Joe Burrow got hurt, but I would have made that pick regardless. I felt like the Browns had the key pieces to actually play well, and they did. Obviously, we know they went to the playoffs. And you had 3 teams in the AFC North go to the playoffs. So, yeah, you got to be concerned. And the reason why you see that the Ravens went to cornerback twice in the draft is because, they feel like that this is the NFL that is prevalent to passing the football. And they want their secondary to always be one of the best secondaries in the National Football League. That is something that they're going to pride themselves on. In terms of, do I think that they are built to potentially beat the Chiefs? I don't know. Like, they've only done it once, since the Lamar / Patrick Mahomes era has started, and that was in a close game at home. And so they're going to start the season in Kansas City. And I will say that like Harbaugh is exceptionally well in week 1 games. And we also saw Kansas City lose last year to the Detroit Lions as well. So it's not like it's out of the realm, but You got to figure out what it is that you want to do, who you want to be first and foremost. You got to be who you are, and you're never going to win football games against a team like the Chiefs if you want to be somebody that you're not, which that's who they were in that AFC Championship game. But also, while I think that the Ravens have done well in the draft, and they did what they needed to do in free agency by bringing Kyle Van Noy back, they still have a lot of question marks at pass rusher, because you got a guy like Odafe Owe who, while has played well, he's played well in everything else that the Ravens like. But the biggest thing they wanted him to do was rush the passer, and that's one of the things that he's not done well with. Although he's done well with everything else, stealing the edge and getting pressure. But the actual getting to the quarterback has been problematic for him. And then David Ajabo, who I'm sure Mari knows from Michigan, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. You know what I'm saying? And I remember seeing him in Michigan. He was a top 15 prospect, and yet he just can't see the field because he had an Achilles injury, and then he had a knee injury last year. So there's a lot of question marks from their pass rush perspective. So you're going to need to make Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable. You do have a good interior defensive line, so maybe that can help you up front. But overall, they didn't do much to upgrade their linebacking core, in my opinion, Kansas City. And then they lost Jadarius Sneed. So you need to find a way to pound and ground, pause, or whatever, but also, you just got to find a way to, just run it down their throats. And then, while they are very well coached from a secondary perspective, they did lose one of their best cornerbacks. So trying to figure out maybe who your third wide receiver can be to expose the mismatch, I think it's possible. It's just they gotta know who they are going into week one. That's the only way you're gonna know how to win. So.
That paper on this player, haters, old news, money on the other line, so I'm not gonna hold you. Money on the other line, so I'm not gonna